So this is our 12.2. We're on page 109 now. And we're going to look some more at quadratic equations in this section. And so first of all, remember that quadratic equations must be in standard form. They must equal 0. And for quadratic equations, there will always be two answers. So we're looking for two answers each time we're solving them. So the formula to solve quadratic equations is x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Now every time we put in a letter, and we're going to put it in, or replace a letter, we're going to replace it with parentheses. Now this b is the b from our equation that we talked about in our last section. The a is the letter that's in front of the x squared, and the c is the letter that's at the end by itself. So we're going to solve this. It says give an exact answer. It's already in standard form. It already equals 0. So let's write our formula down. The opposite of b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. And I put all those parentheses in there because now when I write it, I'm going to leave the parentheses blank. I'm just going to fill in the numbers that go inside of them. So remember in this equation that we're reading a here. A is 2, b is 5, and c is negative 3. So the first letter we see in our formula is b. So I'm going to put 5 in the first parenthesis and 5 in the next parenthesis because that's also a b. And then we have an a, and then we have a c, and in the denominator we have an a. So once we've got those filled in, I'm going to show you we're going to do simplifying carefully. So we're going to start with this part right here. So this is a negative 5, so we're just going to write negative 5. Then we'll write plus or minus the square root. Now we're going to do all of this that's underneath the square root in our calculators all at once. Type it in just like you see it, parentheses and all. If you do that every single time, you'll be better off. And that gives us a 49 inside of here. And then denominator, we're going to do this. 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, so that already looks a lot shorter than it did before, right? So next thing we'll do is do the square root of 49. So the square root of 49 is 7. And once we take the square root, we don't write the symbol any longer because we've done it. And now this actually gives us two answers. We have x equals negative 5 plus 7 over 4, and x equals negative 5 minus 7 over 4. So negative 5 plus 7 is 2 over 4, which is 1/2. Negative 5 minus 7 is negative 12 over 4, which is negative 3. So our two answers are 1/2, x equals 1/2, and negative 3. So we'll do this the same way. I'm going to write the formula down on the top of the screen. If you write the formula down each time, it will help you keep from making mistakes. And then I'm going to write it again with the parentheses empty so that I can just fill them in. So here A is 3, B is negative 7, and C is negative 5. So it starts with B. B goes in the first two parentheses. And then A goes in the top and in the bottom. And then C goes in this last spot. So again, we'll start with simplifying this. Negative, negative 7, or the opposite of negative 7, is 7. And we'll do this in our calculator all at once. Again, those parentheses are really important. And you should get 109. And we'll also do this at the same time, which gives us 6. Now if you try to take the square root of 109, you'll either get a long decimal or you'll get the square root of 109 right back. It doesn't simplify. So that just tells us that because the directions ask for an exact answer, not a decimal answer, our answers are just 7 plus the square root of 109 over 6, and 7 minus the square root of 109 over 6. So let's look at this one. This again is already in standard form. I'm going to write the formula on the top of the screen again. And then I'll write it with the parentheses empty. Okay, and we know that A is 2, B is negative 5, and C is 17. So we start with a negative 5 in the first two parentheses, and then a 2 goes in the next one and in the denominator, and the 17 goes in the last one. So we'll start with simplifying it the same way, and negative negative 5 is 5. We'll do the part that's underneath the square root all at once. And if we do that all at once, we get a negative 111, and 2 times 2 in the denominator is 4. Now our next step would be to take the square root of negative 111, and if you do that, you'll probably get an error message back, or you'll get something with an I maybe. But the problem is that we can't have a negative underneath the square root. Anytime that happens, there's no solution. Okay, and again, just to remind yourself, write it down. If you have a negative underneath the square root, there's no solution. So let's look at this one. Here we know that A is 3, B is negative 13 because it's a number in front of X, and C is 0 because there's nothing by itself. So if I write my formula with the parentheses blank, remember that B goes in the first spot and in the second spot, and then A goes in the next spot and in the denominator, and C is in the last spot. So a negative negative 13 is 13. If you do what's underneath the square root all at once, we'll get 169, and the denominator gives us 6. If we take the square root of 169, we get 13. And now that gives us two problems. We have 13 plus 13 over 6 and 13 minus 13 over 6. Directions tell us to round to the nearest tenth if we need to. So if we do this first part and we get 13 plus 13 is 26, divide by 6, we get 4.333, so it would round to 4.3. Here, 13 minus 13 would be 0 over 6, and that's just 0. So 4.3 and 0 are our two answers.